The morning I found a $500 fine taped to my cabin door for leaving an old bicycle outside, I swear I thought it was a prank. But nope, turns out it was just the opening act to what would become the wildest, most infuriating showdown of my life. And the woman responsible. Picture this standing next to her spotless Range Rover in a cream suit, worth more than my truck, perfectly coiffed hair attitude for days, Adrian Lockwood. She looked at me like I was something she'd scrape off her Jimmy Choos. And in that moment, I knew she thought she ran the whole show, the houses, the lake, the golf course, all of it. But by the time I was done with her, let's just say she'd be swapping out Chanel for handcuffs. But let me back up a sec, because this story actually starts at my grandmother's funeral in a thunderstorm so heavy it felt like the sky was grieving too. We buried Grandma Opal on a Friday. The rain was coming down in sheets, and I just stood there clutching a black umbrella, feeling everything inside me fracture. She raised me after my folks died, taught me how to see the world not just as it is, but how it could be. I'm talking about the kind of woman who could turn an abandoned lot into a home just by planting a row of wildflowers. Losing her. It didn't matter how full her life had been. It gutted me. When the service ended, Benedict Crane, her attorney, a silver-haired gent with eyes like he'd seen the end of 100 family feuds, pulled me aside. We found a quiet corner, and while people murmured their sorry for your loss, Benedict slipped me a thick envelope. "Declan," he said, gentle but firm, "your grandmother's estate. There's more to it than you might expect." And right then, I remembered that old cabin, the wraparound porch, the crackling fireplace, the summer spent chasing fireflies. I know it's not much, just the cabin, right? I tried to smile. He just shook his head and slid a deed across the table. "Your grandmother owned 1,000 acres. The whole Meadowbrook property, mineral rights, water rights, all of it." I stared, not even pretending to understand. 1,000 acres, that's not just land, that's legacy. The deed was old, faded from 1952. $50,000. I laughed. "That's impossible," I muttered. But then I remembered Grandma walking the boundary lines, pointing out markers only she could see, saying, "This is family land, Declan. Don't let anybody tell you different." Guess she'd meant it literally. Benedict explained most of it. About 800 acres had been leased to something called Meadowbrook Development Corporation, 99 years, $1 a year, but the lease had a typo. Instead of expiring in 2052, it said 1952. You ever have one of those moments where your brain just clicks? My interior designer's eye trained to spot the tiniest flaws locked in on that date. The lease expired 73 years ago. Your grandmother tried to tell them in 2010, Benedict said. The HOA board threatened her with legal action. She had the evidence, so they backed down, but they never renewed the lease. They just kept acting like they owned it. He handed me more papers, maps, a list of every house, the golf course, the whole HOA community, all built on Opal's land. But here's the kicker: the homeowners had no idea. As far as they knew, they'd bought their land outright. Adrian Lockwood and her lawyer Callum Pierce, they knew. But the rest, pawns in a massive lie. That night I drove to the cabin, headlights slicing through the mist, every mile taking me deeper into memories. The place was exactly as I remembered, weathered wood porch swing, creaking in the wind. From the back porch you could just make out the roofs of the HOA's mansions, sitting pretty on what I now knew was my ground. Inside, the place smelled like lavender and old books. I headed straight for the basement, something about the way Grandma always kept the important stuff down there. After some digging, I found it a lockbox combination set to my birthday. Inside the original deed, a hand-drawn survey, the lease, and a letter in Grandma's handwriting. "If you're reading this, I'm gone. I didn't want to burden you, but the land is yours now. Adrian Lockwood knows the lease expired. Be careful, she's dangerous when cornered. I installed cameras. Password's your mom's maiden name. Keep the recordings, you might need them. Don't let them take this land." Love, Grandma. I sat there, the cold of the floor seeping through me, thinking, this isn't just about land, it's about defending what's right. Then bang, 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 someone at the door, loud and insistent. I went upstairs, opened up, and there she was, Adrienne in the flesh. Not a drop of sympathy. She shoved a red envelope at my chest. You owe $47,000 in unpaid HOA fees. You're responsible now. Her voice pure steel. I'll need to review the paperwork, I said, calm as I could. She glared. This isn't a negotiation, Mr. Rhodes. HOA covenants are binding. 30 days or we put a lien on your property. The irony nearly made me laugh. I closed the door in her face, watched her storm back to her SUV. Next morning, bam, $500 fine for the old bike. That afternoon, another $750 for grass over 3 inches. I measured barely a quarter-inch over. Day 3, $1,000 for missing a mandatory HOA meeting I'd never been invited to. The fine stacked up $60,000 in no time. They were trying to bury me. But I'd found Grandma's box. I knew their secret. Time to fight back. I dove headfirst into California property law, HOA statutes, everything. And the deeper I dug, the more it became obvious the HOA only had power over properties in their plat. My cabin outside their lines. Even if the lease was valid, it wasn't. The HOA would be a tenant, not a landlord. And since the lease had expired in 1952, every rule they'd enforced, every fee was a fraud. It was huge. Time for recon. I walked into their pristine neighborhood lawns like golf greens, houses in Stepford shades of beige. Not an ounce of personality. The place was so sterile it made me itch. Then I bumped into a guy in a suit Saturday, mind you, blocking my path. You're trespassing, he sneered. Had to be Callum Pierce, the board's attorney. I showed him a photo of the deed. Actually, this is my family's land. That marker over there, it's the northwest corner. He barely blinked. Your grandmother had dementia. The lease is valid. You're just a kid looking for a payout. He smirked and walked away, tapping on his phone. My blood boiled. That's how they played it. Gaslight, bully, control the story. Back at the cabin, I got a text from an unknown number. Stop digging. You don't want trouble. Instead of scaring me, it just lit a fire under me. Grandma always said I was stubborn. She wasn't wrong. I spent Monday at the county recorder's office, hunched over old records and a microfiche reader. Found both leases, the original with the typo and a 2008 version corrected with whiteout. Someone had doctored the copy that got shown to buyers and realtors. The clerk saw my face. Find what you need, she asked. More than I expected. She said quietly, that HOA's been trouble for years. I took it all straight to Benedict. He wasn't surprised. Your grandmother found the typo in '95. She didn't want to hurt families who'd bought homes, so she stayed quiet. But in 2010, when the board tried to force a new lease offering her $5,000 a year for 800 acres, she refused. They tried to scare her, but she outsmarted them. He handed me a flash drive. 5 years of security footage. Use it. Use. That's when it hit me. The real victims were the homeowners. Folks like Maeve Sutton, a single mom fined $5,000 because her daughter drew flowers on the driveway with chalk. If I can't pay, they'll foreclose, she whispered, voice cracking. Can they do that? I told her the truth. I'm looking into it. Don't pay them a dime. Don't sign anything, and let me see what I can do. That night, I watched security footage. It was mostly nothing dear Grandma gardening, but then 2 men prowling outside the cabin, jiggling the doorknob. Weeks after Grandma refused a meeting with Adrienne. Intimidation, pure and simple. I upgraded my security, then marched straight into the HOA office. Tell Adrienne and Callum I want to discuss the lease. 5 minutes later, I was in a glass-walled conference room laying out the real deed, both leases, maps, legal opinions. The lease expired in 1952. I'm willing to talk, but operating like you own the land ends now. Adrienne exploded, accusing me of extortion, waving around her legal documents. Callum threatened lawsuits, smirked about bankrupting me. But I was ready. 3 property law attorneys agree the lease is void. You've been collecting millions in fraudulent fees, defrauding home buyers. That's wire fraud. I'll give you 30 days to negotiate in good faith. Or I go to the feds. 3 nights later, the alarm blared at 3 a.m., 2 guys gas cans in hand trying to torch my cabin. I called the sheriff, showed them the footage, clear as day, plates, faces, everything. The truck belonged to a guy named Jet Briggs' rap sheet as long as my arm. Any enemies, the deputy asked. Yeah, I said, and they wear designer suits. It was time to call the FBI. Agent Della Raines listened carefully. Send everything. If this checks out, we're talking wire fraud RICO charges. That week I reached out to a handful of residents, folks who'd been fined, threatened, bullied. We crowded into my living room, and when I laid out the documents, I watched hope flicker to life. What happens to us if you win? A retired teacher asked. I don't want to displace anyone, I said, honest. But I want to end the fraud. I'll fight for a fair deal for everyone. I just need you to show up. The annual HOA meeting was a circus. Adrian running the show, Callum smug as ever. When public comments opened, I took the mic, pulled up the projector, and walked everyone through the evidence, the original deed, the typo-ridden lease, the forged copy, the trail of fraudulent fees. The room exploded, people shouting, demanding answers. And right on cue, the FBI swept in. Adrian Lockwood, Callum Pierce, you're under arrest. Justice finally in handcuffs, not Chanel. What happened next? The feds uncovered everything: embezzled funds, kickbacks, conspiracy to commit murder. Adrian, Callum, Jet. The whole rotten crew went down. The court dissolved, the old HOA refunded over $6 million in bogus fees and handed governance to the residents. No more power games, no more fences, no more fear. We debated sell the land, lease it back, form a land trust. Most chose a one-year lease, real self-governance, no more HOA tyranny. We tore down the fences, opened the park, painted murals, and turned the old golf course into gardens and trails. The place finally felt alive. Neighbors became friends. Maeve got back her money and her dignity. Thaddeus, an old-timer, told me, first time since 1985, this feels like home. And yeah, I learned a thing or two about power along the way. It's easy to wield it like a hammer, harder to use it to build. My grandma left me more than land. She left me a choice. Don't be like Adrian, choose trust, not control. Open gates, don't build walls. So here's my question for you. Where's the line between defending what's yours and doing what's right? When does fighting back become its own kind of tyranny? Tell me your story. Share your thoughts on justice, power, and second chances. Ever been pushed too far by a system that thought you'd break? Drop a comment. Let's talk about what real community means together.